told to change one student's grade, so I changed them all. I moved to a new state to take a high school teaching job in a rural town. I liked my fellow teachers and almost all my students. But this was a small town with the usual assortment of outsized attitudes. One student was particularly lazy. Her parents both worked in the small school district. Admin at the HS. Teacher at the MS. She rarely turned anything in on time. And what was turned in was generally rushed or incomplete, as if she'd gotten the instructions secondhand. Somehow, though, she had straight A's in all of her classes. I quickly figured out why. When she turned in another late, incomplete assignment, and I very generously gave it a D, her overall grade in class dropped to a B. I was called in the next day to a meeting with the principal and both of her parents, who immediately complained I was being unfair and capricious with my grades. They accused me of not giving students the instructions. So I showed them the instruction paper, which I passed out and went over in class. They accused me of not giving her specifically a copy. But I remember handing it to her and I told them why. She was making out with her boyfriend when I was trying to go over the instructions. They didn't like hearing that part, lol. They accused me of not being clear with the deadline. But it was the second line of the directions. They accused me of not fairly grading her work. But when I showed them her work, they clearly hadn't seen it before and wondered whether I'd gotten assignments mixed up before I showed them her name on it. The principal asked me to change the grade in the gradebook. I asked about whether she'd have to redo the assignment first. But that was declined by her parents. I understand why my principal caved. It wasn't worth trying to fight two employees in a small rural district already struggling to recruit people. So I went back to my classroom and changed every student's grade to a 100 in the gradebook. No special treatment. Even the ones who hadn't turned in a single thing got a perfect score. The fallout. Many students asked me why their grade changed. But I never addressed it. I would just brush them off by saying not to worry about it. Though clearly rumors were spreading like wildfire in the small school, because even the secretary and the principal asked me about it later on. I only said that yes, I changed her grade. The principal looked like he wanted to ask me about why I changed all the grades. But he just shrugged and walked away. He never interfered in my grade book after that. The student's parents transferred her out of my class and her boyfriend also transferred a day later. No more PDAs in my class. Finally. So no complaints. I adjuncted at a college for a while and was teaching a research method class. Major required. Nearly universally despised. Grading was 30% exams, 40% for the various homework, 20% final paper. Most of the homework was sections of the paper that I gave comments on to make the final better. 10% attendance. Had a student who mostly attended class and did amazingly well on the tests. But that's it. None of the paper sections or other homework. Have the whole class an extension on the final paper to the last day of finals. She turned the final paper in the day after I'd submitted grades to the university. Which was after they sent the threatening email about late submission. Months later I'm getting calls from her parents and my former department chair. They beg me to grade her paper since it was turned in. So I did. It was terrible. So she failed it too. More calls and the chair asks me if another colleague in the department could grade her paper and they'd average them as a fair method since I must be biased. There was a pretty detailed rubric and it was hard to mess up things like no spelling errors, but fine. I don't care. That person gave her a 98.5, which was the exact number the student needed to earn to not fail. At this point I didn't care. But when they called me asking to teach it again, I told them off for having no integrity at all. Parents who do this are not doing their children any favors. They won't be there to protect them when their precious snowflake goes off to a college they are in no way prepared for. Many students asked me why their grade changed, but I never addressed it. I would just brush them off by saying not to worry about it. Though clearly rumors were spreading like wildfire in the small school, because even the secretary and the principal asked me about it later on. I only said that yes, I changed her grade. How does one gain this level of wisdom in responding to inquiries about one's malicious compliance? You somehow manage to perfectly walk the line on letting everyone know exactly why you did what you did, without getting into any trouble for saying anything specific about it. Did they say what to change her grade to? Because if they didn't, it would be very tempting to change it to an F. I had a somewhat similar solution to a similar problem. I had caught a bunch of students cheating, and had given them all zeros. The principal told me to give them credit for the assignments, which I eventually did, but my grade book allowed me weight individual assignments, so I made them all worth 10% of what they were originally worth. It still said 10 out of 10 in the grade book, but it only gave them 1 point toward their total score for the class. They got full credit on an assignment that was now basically worthless. Pegging the grade inflation so hard you wrapped the needle around the pin. Man. Oh man. My dad was a high school principal when I was in high school. If I somehow failed to meet expectations, I was the one who heard about it, not the teacher. And that's the way it should be. How times have changed. I was not a very diligent student but went to a good private school in a wealthy area. After I had feed around on a big assignment and was in danger of getting a failing grade, the teacher called my parents to let them know and enlist them in fixing the situation, i.e. getting me to finish the work, and the teacher would pretend it was on time. After the teacher explained the problem, she said something along the lines of, "So, what should we do about this?" And my mom replied, "Fail her." The teacher was gobsmacked, mentioned what it would do to my grade and GPA, etc. My mom was all, "So what?" As far as she was concerned. If I did the crime, I did the time. She wasn't about to rescue me. Pretty sure that was the only time the teacher ever heard that. Edit to add a missing word because I still don't pay attention. There's a few teachers in my family, and they all agree, the worst parents are other teachers. I had hoped this was a story of parents complaining their child wasn't the top student, so you changed everyone else's grades to 110% or something, but this works too. I've done this. I had a student go to the department head, claiming I had favorites and graded everyone else too harshly. It was a whole ordeal, all for what would have been, at best, 1 PT to her overall grade. The department head sided with me. However, my supervisor decided to grade the largest assignment herself and said she would have had it plus 7 PTS instead of what I assigned it. She even admitted she was biased due to the student's complaint. Ended up telling me to add 7 PTS to that assignment for the student. I said I'll be adding it to all 60 of my students. Because if I was truly a tough grader, all students must have been suffered. And if my boss pushed for me to only add it to that one student, she was forcing me to concede that I grade unfairly. I had a good chuckle that when it kind of got out. The self-proclaimed favorite student said he would have gone to the head and showed her his grades. Solid C+ student. In order to defend my honor. I had a student like this. I caved to them and changed their grade. Then day before final grades were due, I adjusted it back down to what they deserved. Locked my classroom and enjoyed my summer. I want to see her first semester grades in college. Mommy and daddy can't get those changed. And on top of that, She'll be in over her head in the new school. This happens a lot more than people realize. A lot of so-called students are that way due to parents having pull, setting her up for failure. Not until Precious's problems get too big to fix will she learn a dang thing. They are not doing her a favor. The comments in this thread explain way too much about 2022 USA. Disappointed. Glad you didn't screw over all the other students to prove a point by making all the grades zeros. I was teaching AP English Lit at a private Christian school. One parent complained that her son had a D in my class. He has a 1400 SAT score. How can he have a D in your class? I told her straight up. Because he hasn't read the book. I gave several examples of simple questions he couldn't answer about the book because he hadn't even bothered to read a Spark Notes version of the book. Those entitled privileged kids were so annoying. They'd run to the principal, soccer coach whenever they couldn't get their way. Half the high school staff left at the end of that school year, including me. This was a particularly good one. You were really a hero here. Glad for teachers like you my whole life.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.